Livingstone. I'm Adrian Alexander, Caribbean Regional Coordinator for Free the Slaves, which serves as Secretariat to the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. Welcome to this episode of Member Spotlight. We are very, very pleased to be joined by someone who is a very recent member to the coalition from the beautiful island of Jamaica. And of course, Jamaica is in the news at this time as a result of its experience with Hurricane Melissa. And Miss Aylair Livingstone is going to share with us some of her background. And we're also going to look at some of what is taking place at present and how that may impact on the issue of trafficking in persons. So, Miss Livingstone, welcome to Member Spotlight.
Thank you so much. And please do call me Aylair. Thank you. If I may,
Adrian. Of course.
All right. So, yes. So I'm an attorney at law. And I also practice in the field of anti-corruption and anti-trafficking. And my most recent work in the latter, which is anti-trafficking, was with the U.S. Jamaica Child Protection Compact that was implemented through the State Department of the United States, working with Jamaican MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, and partnering also with civil society organizations. And so that ran for, initially it was for 3 years, but it was so successful. And I, as the on-point person on the ground in respect of this, it also is called a criminal justice initiative. And I was a country project director and criminal justice advisor for it. And so we worked so assiduously and also so cohesively with our partners. And that is one of the P's that we talk about in terms of partnerships. And we worked very well with government agencies, with NGOs, with CSOs, with survivors. We can't leave that out. That is always a critical part of the equation. And so we worked so well with them that the program was extended for an additional 2 years,
And I remember speaking with our leadership committee chair, Mrs. Diane Gordon Harrison, and she had only good things to say about you and your work in that capacity, so definitely a glowing recommendation.
Thank you, and thank her, but also I should send the compliment back to her because she was a tremendous guiding force through meetings with her, also through her annual report as the National Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons, which her office is the first of its kind across the Caribbean. And so, her office was very helpful, also wearing the hat as children's advocate. So those two blended together very well in helping us as the Warnock Group. The Warnock Group is one of 3 implementing partners under the Jamaica Child Protection Compact, which we call CPC for short. The other 2 being WINROC and International Organization on Migration. And so we worked alongside them, but also alongside the ONRTIP, which is the Office of the National Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons, and that is Diane's organization. Very helpful in helping us to even work to develop like a national referral mechanism, and also first of its kind online resource facility, almost like an online library that we developed with her, which is available regionally and internationally. So that was one of the high points. And of course, a lot of it had to do with her office's collaboration with us,
Great.
Right.
So have you had those types of engagements in the field of combating human trafficking, apart from the work at the CPC, in terms of maybe some of the things that you're doing now? Is there an overlap, for instance?
There is an overlap. Right now, I work alongside the UNICEF on child protection. And of course, part of that has to do with child trafficking, how best to protect children from all types of abuse, including trafficking in persons. And so part of what I do has to do with strengthening the child protection system in Jamaica. And there are various parts to that, whether it is, there is a national plan of action on an integrated response to children and violence, including, of course, trafficking. And so we're seeking to strengthen that. And there are a number of component parts to that. Right now, we're doing a baseline assessment of how the implementation of that national plan of action has gone. We're also doing a plan of action itself to strengthen it, you know, looking at the various findings and recommendations from seminal reports and evaluations of the overall child protection system in Jamaica. So that is a very critical overlap in that regard, in terms of particular focus on children. And when we get to it, I will tell you why two of my P's sort of have to do with children as well, you know? Yes.
So what are some of the important things you believe that you've accomplished through your work? If you had to rate them in order, because you've done definitely tremendous work.
I think it would have two very important facets of it. And by order of importance, I would say, is being able to name it. So we have a number of trafficking typologies that will come up, which many we found as we did our basic and advanced training with investigators, law enforcement generally, but with generally across law enforcement in Jamaica, but with investigators, detectives, also with the DPP. And in this case, not the DPP, of course, they're the legal people, they would know. But one of the things we found that when we would do case studies of the various ways in which trafficking can manifest, that you would find that people would say, you know, we really, they would charge it on the other offenses, but would not automatically be looking for that aspect of it, which would sound in trafficking, and in particular child trafficking. So we found that to be very encouraging when we would have, because of course we do evaluations, and you would training in evaluations, and we would get the comments in, and that sort of response was one of the highlights, meaning a broader prism looking at intake cases and also response to it, investigation of it. How do you go about not just looking at, say, sexual abuse or so on, but also looking at it through the prism of, could this be child trafficking? The other part was, most people will hear about trafficking, and of course they automatically assume there has to be movement. There has to be, and especially transnational movement. And they're not, you know, so we had to sort of illuminate the point that, listen, it happens in the home, it happens within communities. Nobody has to move anywhere. So that took us into the whole red flags and identification of victims. And so that was very illuminating for a lot of them, that, you know, when we would do case studies and so on, they enjoyed that. Or when I say enjoyed, I mean they found it quite informative, that this could happen. We also highlighted a few cases that have been prosecuted here and with the perpetrators convicted. And so, you know, many of them came to that knowledge. It was new to them. You know, not necessarily the tip unit, which would have been front and center in those types of cases, but the general body of the JCF. So those were two areas that we found that we had a great deal of movement on, in terms of people understanding that even though we have the misnomer trafficking, which sort of suggests and infers some sort of movement that it didn't have to be that. And that is important because now you have the prism and the sphere within which they're looking at it being more realistic and pragmatic as to what happens on the ground, what happens in communities, what happens within families, you know. So I think that those two facets of what we did here on the ground. The other one, you asked me for two, I'm going to add a third. And this was having to do with the investigation, actually, of the crime of trafficking. And what we would find, and the development of what we termed child-friendly spaces. And this was critical because what you would find, and the Commissioner of Independent Investigations, also known as INDICOM, he had made a very good point at some point because we developed one of these child-friendly spaces at two of his offices, one in Kingston and one in Montego Bay. And he made the point that, you know, when you think about it, when you don't have a proper, safe environment within which especially children have been traumatized, can speak about it. And when the investigators and the practitioners do not have a specially designated and resourced place within which they can actually carry out the investigation in terms of interrogation, in terms of just interviewing and getting the account, then there is a denial of access almost to justice, you know, when people are uncomfortable, when they feel as if there is no privacy, and so on. So we, through the Child Protection Compact, we wound up developing around, I would say, maybe up to 12 child-friendly spaces across the country, multifunctional, multi-agency, and they were so very well appreciated. And also appreciated from the users of it. So the children would come in, and also adults would come in and would be so taken with how the care with which their needs were being looked after, you know. So they were very pleased with that. And it all has an underlining underscoring of dignity. You know, you come into a place where clearly it has been set up for you under these very unfortunate circumstances, and we want you to be comfortable. We want you to feel safe, you know, and feel protected and feel as if you're being heard. So, so that was a high point, and we developed a lot of those with the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of National Security, Ministry of Health and Wellness, that is the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, and the Child Guidance Clinic. I'm sorry, the CPFSA is actually under the Ministry of Education. So a broad swath of agencies that we developed these child-friendly spaces with. And it was a collaborative initiative with ideas coming from the agencies as well. So this was not a top-down approach. This was a very integrated type initiative that was launched and that was completed. So that was a highlight, and I hope to see more of those being developed across the region, because in many instances, Adrian, we do have resource limitations, and so this type of facility is usually not at the, you know, top of mind, so to speak. We try, but usually fall a little bit short as to how best to develop them, you know. So that is, those are the three high points, I would think. Also the training materials that came out, and with this we had an eye for sustainability. So we developed online resources, online training platforms with, say, the Justice Training Institute. This is under the Ministry of Justice.
Yes.
And that type of training, it's self-paced, on demand, and it's available to justice professionals, whether it is police officers, judges, prosecutors, as well as NGOs and so on. They can come in and get a very strong foundation on trafficking and on child trafficking in particular, how to investigate, how to identify best practices in prosecution, you know, and also interrogation techniques or interviewing and interaction. Scratch that word interrogation. Interviewing and interaction.
Sure.
Positive
Right.
interviewing and interaction techniques with victims and with witnesses. So we were very proud of that particular course. We were very proud of the online resource that was developed with, and also we put out a publication
Nice.
very much along the same lines, which all of the agencies that we interacted with and worked and partnered with, they have copies of that. It's also available online. So that was the high point. We really tried for sustainability so that when that program was finished, when that project wound up, which it did just last year, 2024, that there was something that would be sustained and that the knowledge would still be there, you know.
That's so important because very often projects do wind up and only the immediate participants who would have been selected at that time can benefit, and the knowledge is lost to so many others.
That's right.
I trust
Right.
that there has been no damage to some of the child protection centers as a result of Hurricane Melissa. I know there was extensive damage to the
Most
West.
Right. Well, most of them were in Manchester. I'm going to name them out now. Now, you know, the storm was really to the west, southwest. Manchester had a bit of it. The one we set up was in Mandeville. I haven't heard anything regarding the Sissoko office there, right? The Victim Services Division's office there. And then we also set up in Montego Bay on the now that I'm not quite sure about. That was set up with the Trelawney police station, within the Trelawney police station.
Okay.
Right. So I'm not quite sure about that. We have others that were set up in Portland, which luckily did not see much of Melissa at all.
Okay.
Right. So and then we did also in Kingston with the TIP unit, and also with Sissoko. So there is that. Sissoko is the Center for the Investigation of Sexual Offences and Child Abuse, and that falls under the Ministry of National Security. Right. So I'm not aware of any one of them. We have been spared, I think, by far and large.
Quick question, as you were mentioning these achievements according to Peace, right? In terms of the work of the project, how much progress would you say has been made in terms of prevention? A lot of work, I understand, in terms of prosecution and even some protection, but in terms of prevention, changing some of the dynamics maybe of individuals and how they culturally view the activities which we now know are trafficking offenses.
I'm very happy that you use the word cultural. Because as with anything else, and of course in my work now with UNICEF, we talk about normative changes. Of course, that usually takes time, and then we have the Jamaican type of outlook, which talks about how to discipline children. Children must be seen, not heard. That type of thing. And I think maybe that is regional as well, perhaps. So the prevention part of it, inroads are being made because, and let me tell you what a very basic non-scientific observation of mine. When sometimes you will look at local media and you will hear people, like an incident will happen or a child goes missing, and suddenly you started hearing the word trafficking enter into the narrative by, normal people on the ground. You know what I mean? So it is getting, and I think this is due to the work of the OCA. This is Mrs. Gordon Harrison and her team OCA, ONR TIP, and of course the TIP unit. They have been, I mean, very, very much out there in terms of getting getting it within the local and community narrative, you know. So that has been very important. I don't have particular statistics that I can give to you, but certainly in terms of people being familiar. Now, when somebody goes missing, you will hear people casually say, and when I say casually, not that they don't care, but it comes up now, whereas perhaps before it would not, where people would say, you know, is traffic, maybe it's trafficking, somebody gone with the child. You know what I mean? So that sort of a thing is very encouraging to hear. But of course, as with anything else and anything that sort of has a cultural sort of practice attached to it in terms of how people behave towards a particular demographic, then it's going to take a long time to change certain practices that still obtain within certain communities and families. For instance, there was one case where I think Diane had highlighted a couple of years ago, child shifting, which for me it can take place in two ways, where you have a child in the country, parent or parents cannot afford to, you know, take care of that child, so they send the child off to a relative who most likely many times is in the urban area for schooling, you know, just for general taking care of that child and to send that child. The purpose usually is to send to school. Sometimes you will find that that child is not sent to school consistently, that child basically becomes a domestic servant within that household, is denied certain things. And then you have another typology, I will call it, which has emerged in recent times. I don't know if it has continued. I'd have to check that out for you. But in one case, we had like a mother would give her child for some money to, whether it be friends or just acquaintances, passing acquaintances, so that they could use the child as a prop. Usually this would be months-old baby or a toddler, very young toddler. Use that child in another part of the island as a prop for begging, you know. Yes. So,
Whoa.
yes, so it, you know, this type of a thing, you will find that you will never be able to outrun the different types of ways in which people get creative as to how um, trafficking itself can manifest. The only good thing is that we're aware that yes, it is not static, it is not linear. It, you know,
Yes.
so we have to be on the lookout for these different types of ways in which children and human and adults are being trafficked, are being exploited, whether sexually, whether through labor, all of these things, you know. So that is my viewpoint on it, that it is still a very wide ranging issues and that it happens really under the radar, because not many ways in which it happens is identified as a crime, you know, or if it is, it is another crime, you know, maybe under
Right.
the Child Care and Protection Act, you know. So yes.
Some of those actually came up for discussion last year when we had the Freedom from Slavery Caribbean Regional Forum in Kingston. And of course, ONR TIP collaborated with Free the Slaves to co-host that.
Right.
And the theme looked at culture, what role culture plays in the perpetration and what role culture can play in addressing trafficking in persons. And a lot of some of the, I mean, wonderful, brilliant lecturers from UE Mona who were presenters, and the discussions got into what we call things. And we may not call it, as you mentioned, some professionals within the legal and childcare systems may have other names, may have offenses under which some of the activity falls. But the person in the street, the person in the community, the person in the family, may have other names which are fairly benign for their behavior, and therefore they don't see it as criminal. They see it as normal. They see it as survival, right?
Survival. I was just about to use that word.
Yes.
I mean, some people might find it horrific that certain things, but in some instances, sadly, this is viewed even sometimes by the victims themselves as something that I need to do for the family, and so this is why we say usually it's in plain sight, but still under the radar, you know.
Correct. So, I mean, that is an area I know, as you mentioned earlier, takes time to shift those normative values. But it's work that needs to be done, because we can't incarcerate ourselves out of everything. We can't
That's
prosecute ourselves out of everything. We need to change the mindsets, the
mindset.
knowledge, the attitudes, and then the behaviors of people, especially, as you mentioned, even survivors
That's right.
may see what their parents or their peers have done
Mhm.
as just a means of survival. And while we identify,
Self-identification, self-identification. Because
right,
we had, we even had in some training that we did, we would have like counselors on hand because in many instances you would find that um, we anticipated that this would happen, and I actually had that happen at one training where one person was so traumatized, and I think that is when the self-identification comes in, where you realize this is what happened to me. We are talking about things that happened to this person, and so we actually had that happen. And so we had to do an intervention, not me, but certainly the practitioners who we had on hand to handle it. And I mean, that person was traumatized. There was secondary trauma happening because everybody was now, not everybody knew about it, but I certainly did. And we had to convene elsewhere with that person, with the specialists, and then I left them to it to do, what they needed to do with some privacy, and so there is that as well in terms of self-identification. Many of them don't realize that this is what is actually happening to them, you know, which is very sad.
but it's a breakthrough in the
It
sense
is,
that they now have another name for what
yes,
happened to them. It's not something that's excusable or normal anymore. It's something that they can identify as having been criminal, a violation of their rights, not
that's right,
something they would wish to pass on to others because
that's
they
right,
see it now in a different way. And they can take a stand, and fortunately, as you mentioned, the professionals were on hand to help this individual. So they appreciate the value of seeking help when self-identification comes along. Because getting
yep.
help is so stigmatized in our region. But it means, therefore, that coming to that understanding that this happened to me, it was not my fault. It wasn't something that should have happened. It's not normal. It's highly abnormal and it's
I didn't
criminal.
call it. I didn't invite it upon myself,
Correct.
that sort of a thing. I
Correct.
wasn't a bad person. This just happened to be the circumstances within which I found myself. I'd say, for instance, as a child or as an adult, because I was seeking to better myself.
And even
Um,
in terms of circumstances that we find ourselves for a child, it would, to my mind, it should be more like these are the things that others who knew better decided to do to me to exploit me because I was unaware,
mhm,
right? I was unaware as a minor. And I think, it puts the responsibility on the adult where it should rest, so that we continue to protect our dear ones and keep them safe. Yeah.
we have this is just an organic type discussion.
Very, very
Whoever
so.
wants to go, I'm available. And so we have, as part of that, on the other side of the coin, you have, as we said before, that parents might not even realize that what they're doing is wrong. just plain wrong. And so we have, as part of the child protection ecosystem here in Jamaica, the National Parenting Support Commission that works with parents through schools and through other organizations and have been doing stellar work, you know, bringing in the male component, the fathers, you know, because as I was writing a report just recently, it's speaking about that 70 odd or 80 odd percent, I think I have to refer back to that, of households are headed by women in Jamaica. So it means, I was talking about communication. So it means you have to target your messaging has to bear this in mind in terms of who is leading the household, and an overwhelming majority of them think disciplinary measures involve corporal punishment. It has to be physical. So if you put those two together, you sort of know who you need to target. And so saying that though, and again, going back to my original point, which was many of them don't know that this is wrong. Or they know it's sort of wrong, but it's okay. I did it. My mother do it. You know what I mean? It's okay. It's okay. The other thing that was quite, I think, quite helpful under that criminal justice initiative was the development of a national referral mechanism, which sort of made it very clear from intake straight through to perhaps reintegration. You know, what do you do when, for instance, trying to get out of the children's home type of situation, working with the CPFSA for that. But from intake right through to educational opportunities, you know, social opportunities that are provided and so on. So that was another area that was quite, I believe, important for people to know, okay, where are the primary offices, responders, first responders that I need to call? What are the numbers? Because it's almost as if each has its own type of intake number. So you will have the National Children's Registry, you will have OCA, you will have the TIP unit, you will have CISOCA. So it can get a little bit confusing. Another, I believe in a data-driven approach, data-informed approach. And so part of the statistics for this report that I told you I was putting together spoke about, I've lost, I think, what percentage was it? Yes, that people, even though all of these agencies together were doing such a sterling job, you know, you could see it, the type of work that they're doing, the reports that they're putting out. When you did an evaluation, an on-the-ground evaluation, which in a 2022 survey that was done, 80% of people said they didn't know where to access these services, child protection services. So this type of statistic and data is important to know how well you're doing. And yes, you're providing the services. Yes, you're out there on the ground, but is it taking, as we would say? Do people know, now that I've self-identified, now that I have an idea, you've given me all of this information, where do I go? Who do I start with? And so this is where the national referral mechanism that was developed in conjunction with the ONR-TIP and the OCA, Diane's offices, came in very handy, you know. So, yes.
Definitely, as you said, it's a work in progress. I think across the region, it is a work in progress. And it's great to see individual departments and agencies step up and even open hotlines. But as you rightly pointed out, it could become so confusing. So a central number, a hub where people will then refer your inquiry or your need to the appropriate department may simplify things. But again, it's still definitely progress being made. Just need to tweak and fine tune. Yeah. But let me get.
Sorry, one last point. I know, I've
No,
kept you
this
up.
is great. I totally enjoy just the
Just
beauty of the
talking about,
conversation and exploring solutions in
yeah.
particular. Yeah.
And talking about solutions, which is the next point I wanted to raise, is that the Child Protection and Family Services Agency here in Jamaica is sort of piloting or wanting to pilot what they call a child protection early warning system. Now, this is with regard to sort of an integrated type of response and coordination among the CPS, the Child Protection System, the agencies within it, so that from intake, you are able to discern. All of them, I don't know exactly how it will work. I am not that technical, but this is my understanding of it, that it goes within a certain database that everybody has access to within the child protection system. Of course, you'd be paying attention to privacy concerns and all of these things. Data would be anonymized, but you're able to know from one child protection agency to the next, maybe one that provides mental health services, maybe one that provides integration services, maybe one that needs to pay attention to the home, what's happening in the home, and maybe do an intervention there. So that type of data, the case report, would be available. And so everybody would be able now to develop, like, let's say, a treatment plan and a process that they're going to, what are the steps that we need to take to address this particular matter. So I think that in short is what it is. I'm sure they will give you far more information than this. But this is what the CPEWS is proposing. And I don't know if this could be a good segue in the P's that we're talking about. That is prevention, so you're able to pick up at a particular point, even if it doesn't come in as a trafficking case. Is there opportunity for that to happen at some point, and you intervene as appropriate? So when it comes to prevention, I would say that's one of the areas. I don't know whether it is happening regionally among other countries. I would love to do some sort of a analysis of generally what the trafficking situation is in the countries. But that would be a good initiative to model, across the region. But you asked about the two P's. My two P's are prevention and protection. And of course, based on what we've been talking about, that my emphasis is on prevention, and just so self-identification and also greater knowledge on the ground as to what trafficking can and does look like,
Right.
not necessarily dependent on movement of anybody. So you can understand how it happens, all the different typologies that are there. So red flags will go up when you see certain things. For instance, I was in Bahamas, I think it was last year, and at the airport, it was just flush with banners that spoke about trafficking, what you should be on the lookout for, ordinary travelers. I thought that was so good. I actually took a few photos of it, So the prevention part of it and also the protection part of it is important, with an emphasis on safe spaces for when you are going to be investigating or starting an investigation, or a sort of interaction with somebody who has been harmed or has the potential to be harmed. You need these spaces within which they can feel safe, they can feel protected, and they can feel as if their voices will be heard, right? To sort of stymie any further development along that line. So that is where I am at the moment.
And I would love to connect you to two survivor leaders within the coalition. I'm not sure if you've already met them, but they are from Jamaica.
Shamir?
Shamir and
Yes.
Sandra.
Yes.
Okay, so
No, I
you've met
haven't.
Sham.
No, I haven't met Shamir.
Mhm.
Neither of the two, But we
Okay.
have referenced Shamir's story
Right.
and what she has accomplished. This is when we're dealing with, for instance, we would have training on secondary trauma, which is important.
It
So
is.
we did that with the Ministry of Justice's Child Guidance Clinic, and with the head of the adult and no, I think adolescent mental health unit. So we did that with them to talk about, because we talk about the victims, we talk about the witnesses, we talk about the survivors. What about the first responders?
Yeah.
I will tell you that I encountered somebody from one of the agencies here in Jamaica, and I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" Because she was always at our training, very highly pleased. And I said, "How is it going at the agency?" And she said, "I've left." And I said, "Oh my gosh, what are they going to do without you?" I said, "Why?" And she said, "Too traumatic." She said, every day having to deal with that sort of a situation. So it
That
is
is
real.
heavy.
That's right. So
That's right.
we have to sort of balance as we go along, to also take care of our first responders.
Yeah.
They are susceptible to trauma just as anybody else, having to deal with and handle these types of cases, many of which can be quite horrific, you know. So that was part of it as well. So I would like to see a little bit more in that line as well. And people do feel appreciated when you pay attention to what their work involves, you know.
Great. Yeah. I
So,
think within the coalition and within Free the Slaves, we've been looking at that actually since March of this
mhm,
year. We've been emphasizing self-care
yes.
during the Caribbean Anti-Trafficking Conference that was held in July.
Yeah.
Each of the half days ended with Sandra and sometimes Shamir
Mhm.
providing self-care tips. And, usually virtual conferences and so on, by the time it winds down and you're basically it's the end of the meet, people just log off, right?
Everybody's ready to go.
They
Yes.
just,
Not this time.
that did not happen. For each of the 4 half days, people
Yes.
stayed on, received the information. Sandra also took us through like how to basically practicing the self-care practices so that people stayed. And when we did the evaluation for the conference, 100% of the respondents said that they derived tremendous value from those self-care sessions. We need to take care of ourselves and, as you said, the first responders and, of course, the survivors. Yeah,
Yeah.
all around
We,
it is
a
critical issue.
part of the training that we had done, and I believe this was in Mobay, the one of the specialists that we had in to present talked about and actually went through. I thought it was going to be, oh, yawn. I could appreciate it, but I wondered about the impact. And so we worked with her on sort of simplifying and making it as easy to grasp. And when she did that in terms of impact of trauma on the brain, and sort of went through all the ramifications, what can happen, what you can find happening to you on account of. It was so eye opening, the appreciation, as you say, with Shamir and Sandra. It was so eye opening for them because apparently many of them had been experiencing some of these effects. And so
Correct.
now they're able to sort of put two and two together to say,
Mhm.
okay, I'm not just tired, I'm not just exhausted. It is a response mechanism to what I have been handling. So not 100% of the times, but primarily. So therefore, maybe you should seek additional assistance with this. And so we had that response team there as well. So that, if they felt a need to book an appointment to talk about something, it was available. So that was a type of care that we took in putting these trainings together. We would sort of brainstorm and speak to the specialists on the ground and also speak to the particular agency. What do you need? What is it that you think we need to do? And so that worked out quite well. But yes, it's very important, the balance that needs to be there, you know.
We have to balance your time as well. So I will release you. It has been a beautiful conversation and really enjoyed chatting with you, Aylair. I encourage people, if you're viewing this Member Spotlight podcast, get in touch with Aylair. She has so much to share, so much value that she brings to this area of work. And Aylair, how can people reach you? Maybe an
Well,
email address or
yeah,
so.
yes, Aylair Livingstone, and you know the spelling, so you can put it there. The Aylair is a little bit
Definitely.
weird. Aylair Livingstone
It's
and
unique, it's different, not weird. Okay,
gmail.com. So they can
sure.
reach me there. And if needs be, we can always hop on over to WhatsApp for immediacy in terms of communication and so on, you know.
Great.
Uh, and there is the length, the breadth of work that we did here. It was really a very um, satisfying experience working with that initiative, working with so many people as we did, working with a lot of women, which was important, even though a lot of them occupy the leadership positions in Jamaica. But at the same time, yes, we had a lot of women who we worked with. So there was sort of like a gender thing there, but also we tried to bring the men in as much as possible so that you would know. And so what we would do is to have a survivor come to one of the law enforcement trainings that we had. One, there was another one who would not because there was an experience, and I will not go further with that. But there was one that came and made a presentation, and it really was impactful because there sometimes there can be a male, female, or a gender divide in terms of how you look at things and bringing that into your work as a law enforcement person. So when you hear it, and then we had a head of CTOC, which is a crime organization unit within law enforcement, and he spoke about. We did a video of him, and he spoke about what he had encountered, and as the father of girls, and the impact that that was so hard driving when that was presented, and he actually came and spoke about it again. So it had the attention of many of our male investigators, you know, how to be more sensitized, how to be more sensitive. It's not just that she dress a certain way. It is not just that she behave a certain way. No, you have to look beyond that because many of them have been groomed. Many of them, you know. So yes, that was very important. Okay, I go off again. I'm on again.
No, but that's lovely. So, Ilya, it has been a joy chatting with you, and may God continue to bless your work. I look forward to hearing wonderful things. And I know that as you engage with some of the projects here at the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons, you'll make it even better. Mhm.
I thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to working with the organization, to lending any amount of expertise I can, and also for this opportunity to talk about what is happening here in Jamaica, to talk about stellar people who are on the
Yes.
ground, and also some of the projects that are still on the way to help with this problem that we have and this ghastly crime of trafficking in persons, you know. So thank you once again. Very much appreciated. Look forward to talking to you another time as well.
Okay, Ilya, it has been my pleasure. Right?
Have a
Bye-bye
good
now.
evening. Bye.